Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Namofsky. On today's episode, we're going to take a look at life in academia. When someone says they're a professor, what do you picture in your mind? Is it a man or a woman? Tradition says that it's a man, but according to the American Enterprise Institute, a majority of new PhDs in 2022 were women. Popular opinion is that professors in academia have it easy. They teach a few classes, grade a few papers, and maybe even publish a few articles. But the reality is that it is a cutthroat business, just like any other male-dominated industry. And if you're a woman who's interested in getting your PhD and working in academia, this show is absolutely for you. I'm joined by Nevena Trykov, PhD Assistant Professor of Political Science and Public Policy Department of Political Science and the Public Policy Institute, Jacksonville University. Nevena, thank you so much for being on Empowered. Welcome.
Hi, Liz. Thanks for the invite.
So give me some background. Why pursue a degree in political science, a field that is traditionally male-dominated?
Well, my journey started in Detroit, Michigan, which is where I'm originally from, and I was working in business, particularly for an architectural firm that dealt a lot with the city and having to deal with permits and politics at that level. And you soon learn the reality of, well, there's politics in everything, every facet of your life. It revolves around some political decision. And when I think about what politics is, there's a definition by Harold Laswell that says politics is basically deciding who gets what, when, and how much of it. So that new lens really started my questions about the political realities, not just at the city level in Detroit or at the state level of Michigan or in the United States, but really globally. And comparing those contexts between those localities or those countries to each other. So that was kind of, my entrance, and it just got me asking a lot of questions, and I fell for the discipline.
Okay, so let's talk about the lens. Through the lens of a woman, was there a difference in the 17 years between your two PhD programs? And has there been progress with regard to more equitable representation of women's voices and ideas?
Well, it's definitely gotten better. The first time I did a PhD was, I started in 2005. And even though it was in the 2000s, and you would think that, this is now enough progress along the timeline where we had more equity, I guess you could say, between the genders. Compared to when I did this last PhD, there is definitely more representation among women. You just mentioned that both the United States and in Canada, the statistics are the same, that the majority of new PhDs are women, in fact. But back then, there was still this greater practice of the good old boy system, right? The old right was still there. They are now, fortunately or unfortunately, aging out. And with that comes in a new generation of really new thinkers, right? And new perspectives of what that relationship should be. There is still a long way to go, however. And so, we have this shift. It is happening in those 17 years. Also, between these 17 years, there's been a growing awareness of just how underrepresented women are in academia and then across the ranks within academia itself. So there is a little bit of more fire under the system, you could say. But the reality is that even in a study from 2019, academia, despite our liberal bubble house that we live in, apparently, it's one of the worst offenders when we start talking about the subject of gender disparity.
So we have less than a minute to the commercial, but I wanted to ask, a large and vital part of academia is research and the exchange of all findings at conferences. As a woman, how well is the gender represented, particularly when it comes to references to their work in a good old boy culture?
Yeah, well, what's really important about academia is publishing and research. And when we start talking about high impact journals, because journals are ranked, only about 30% of those articles that are found in high impact journals are from women. And this impedes promotion. It's not just about going to conferences, which is wonderful, but it really is about doing meaningful research and contributing to your discipline. And if you're not being represented in that high impact journal, then we have a serious problem going down the line with regards to promotion and equity.
So when we come back, we'll still cover academia, being a woman, and getting your PhD. So please don't go away.